Go.
Good evening. For those of you who have been with us for the past few weeks, welcome back. I'm pleased to be here again with Joy Astolfi this evening, hosting a special discussion on the incredible capacity of the brain to change, neuroplasticity, and resilience. For our new viewers, my name is Lara Melashenko. I'm a professional learner, educator, and follower of Jesus. Joy is a mental health therapist with 25 years experience working with clients who are hurting and seeking change. Joy holds a Master of Science in Marital and Family Therapy from Loma Linda University and has special training in cognitive behavioral therapy, the Nedley Depression and Anxiety Recovery Program, Optimize Your Brain, Positive Psychology, Connecting Parent Program, to name just a few. Aside from being a committed follower of Jesus and a talented therapist, Joy enjoys gardening, exercising, spending time with family and friends, traveling, hiking, and eating Italian, Mexican, vegan, and Asian restaurants. Joy, a few weeks ago, we received a ton of phone calls from our viewers regarding your presentation on the brain and emotional intelligence. I'm so glad that you've chosen to dig deeper into the brain tonight. I think our viewers are going to enjoy this presentation on the brain's incredible capacity to change. I want to encourage our viewers, if you've got any questions or comments, to call in or ask on our Facebook feed and join us in the discussion. So Joy, before we get started, can we just invite Jesus to be with us and as we share this time together? Father God, we just thank you for this brain that you've given us. As Ben Carson once said, you've got a brain, use it. We just want to pray that as we talk tonight, you would be with us. And for those viewers that are listening in, we just ask that you would also be with them in their homes. And Lord, may we just make you proud in our discussion about the brain that you've given us. Amen.
Amen.
So Joy, we've been through a lot of change in our society recently with this pandemic. Mm-hmm. And with each change has come a need for adaptation, big time. Mm-hmm. And there's more change to come. As we begin to reopen our societies, we've got more adapting to do. So on that note, tell us what we're going to learn tonight.
Well, hello, Lara, and our audience. Thank you so much. It's great to be here, and I'm glad Lara's with me. And this evening, we're going to be talking about a rather ever-blossoming area of brain science called neuroplasticity. And we're going to share it in the light this evening. Of course, we've started this series in regards to ways that people can address and enhance their mental health through this COVID-19 situation. And even this week, one of the topics on radio and TV were, okay, so people have been cooped up for some period of time. I even heard one broadcaster say, people have been programmed to stay inside. So, how do we then help people to adjust? So what we're going to talk about tonight is the fact that the brain definitely has more than that capability to do so. And there's just a ton of research out there. It's ongoing. It's fascinating. It's really, really interesting. And what we're going to try to do is, neuroplasticity is a really big fancy name. It basically means the brain is plastic and moldable. So we're going to go in through some of those pieces this evening. So if I could just turn to our slideshow. I do need to begin with a disclaimer, and that is that these presentations are health education seminars, are not to be construed or interpreted as professional therapy or to be considered as mental health treatment in place of therapy. If you or someone that you know is experiencing mental health challenges, please seek a health professional for help with these issues. As such, this is a Radio Bible Light situation, so no video or audio recording is allowed. The presentations I'm sharing is not in my capacity as a provisional psychologist. It is presented as a fellow Christian, and I am gleaning from my professional work to provide examples and theoretical evidence-based information. For our program this evening, just to give a brief outline, we're going to talk about the amazing brain, just a brief review of the specific components we'll be talking about. Another piece on brain health. I have a little treat for us tonight on nutrition and the brain. Are you stuck? Sometimes we can feel stuck and that our brain is not moving so well. We will then launch into the neuroplasticity piece and provide some encouragement and hope at the end. This feature of the brain is incredibly fascinating, and that's at the core of our ability to be resilient during times like COVID-19, the ability to bounce back. And in fact, I would say it's probably one of the most integral factors in whether or not people will shrink or survive in these situations. So here's some brief brain facts we have here. Your brain has 100 billion nerve cells in it. And that's a lot that is put in there in that 2.5 to 3 pound brain. There are thousands of different kinds of neurons. And one neuron can make connections with thousands of others. In fact, some of the more complex cells will communicate with up to 200,000 other cells. A conservative estimate is that there are approximately 100 trillion synapses, or where the cells communicate. There are gaps between our cells. Those synapses are over 100 trillion of them, and some recent research is stating that there may be as many as 10 times more, which would put us into the quadrillion place. So it's a pretty busy place. It's very complex. Looking at the cellular level, on the left, you can see that there is a neuron that is trying to communicate with another one. The gap in there is called the synapse that we were just talking about. There are those little blue dots or transmitters. So the message is taken from one cell to another by those little blue dots or the neurotransmitters. Where we're talking about neuroplasticity, function takes place right in that gap as well, and our ability to bounce back and to move around. Because if we look at the brain as a whole, those different types of neurons that we have all have specific types of functions. For example, your frontal lobe at the front of the brain is, in a human, about 32 to 38%. We've talked about this in previous other broadcasts in regards to the essential function that it plays in our everyday life. It's executive functions, thinking and planning, organizing and problem solving, emotions and behavioral control, and personality. Right behind that is your motor cortex, which has a lot to do with our movement and how we interact with the world in that way. Sensory cortex is our sensations. The cortex is right behind that. Then we have the parietal lobe, which is involved with perception, making sense of the world, arithmetic, and spelling. The occipital lobe is at the back of the brain and is responsible for taking care of our vision. The medulla oblongata is where our breathing, heart, and respiration is. It's more like around the brain stem area. And then there you've got the temporal lobe, which is our memory, understanding, and language. There are some pieces of the inside of the brain we talked about previously that we won't get into this evening, but if you're curious, please look up the limbic system of the brain or refer to some of our previous broadcasts. So in brief, in order to have better brain health, there's a number of different factors that go into that. So diet and nutrition is really important. Lifestyle, our exercise and deep breathing, sleep, water and hydration, fresh air and sunshine. Faith and trust is also a section of our well-being that's very important. And then last time we talked about effective thought processes, or the cognitive behavioral therapy. Just this week I was talking with a number of the patients that seem to be doing a little bit better just by having some of that fresh air and sunshine. They've been getting out a little bit more. Weather has been better up here in Canada, and they're able to do some more of that exercise. With the anxiety piece for many folks, though, still seeing some deep breathing exercises needed. And also, people are finding that when they are eating less on the run, they're at home and their diet's a little bit better, they're also feeling better. I want to introduce you on the nutrition side of things to a friend of mine by the name of Patty Houteling. She hails from California. I just want to give a shout out to her. And this week, in our week one, we had shown one of her culinary creations, and yesterday she sent me a picture of another one, and I just want to share it with you this evening. In my mind, Patty is a culinary genius, and she has the ability to create fantastic tasting food that is also very healthy for you. So I just want to say thank you to Patty for sharing this with us this evening. What she's shared with us is a really interesting creation called a no tuna salad, and she has very creatively decorated it there. I do want to share, I'm going to share also the recipe with those that might be interested in wanting to try something creative at home. There's been a resurgence or actually maybe directive to plant-based eating lately. There certainly is a plethora of science that talks about the ability of the brain and the body to function better. And so even our Canada Food Guide has gone more in the plant-based direction. So I'm just going to give some of our folks that might be interested this evening a little recipe here that you might find helpful for the no tuna salad. So as you can see here, if you want to grab out a pen and paper, on the salad side you want 2 cans of garbanzo beans drained, 4 ribs of celery, half a red onion, half a cup of fresh basil chopped, and 2 ripe avocados chopped. And then for the dressing, we want half a cup of raw cashews, half a cup of water, 3 tablespoons of lemon juice, 2 tablespoons of honey mustard, 1 clove of garlic minced. Now what you want to do is place all of the dressing ingredients in a blender and blend it till smooth and make a really nice smooth dressing. And then place the garbanzos in a food processor and pulse it till they're just kind of broken up and chunky. And then transfer the garbanzos to a bowl with all the other salad ingredients. Mix it together, add dressing, and toss everything gently. And that no tuna salad can be used on crackers and sandwiches or however you wish to serve it.
Looks delicious.
It is, huh? I'm actually thinking about it right now, how nice that would be.
I know, but I have all of those ingredients too. They're actually quite common.
Yes.
So thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome. It was kind of fun. And meaning that we're coming into summer, it's a really nice light recipe for people to get into. Next, we're going to show on our slides, we're going to show a video. And a picture is worth 1,000 words. And as we watch the video, I'd like you to take note of the expressions on the people's faces, as well as some of the things that they do.
Whoa, that's not good.
Oh, I don't need this. I'm already late.
Somebody will come. Anybody out there?
Do you have a phone?
No. Sorry. Somebody! Hello? There are 2 people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something? I don't believe this. You gotta be kidding me.
I'm gonna cry.
No, well, there's not enough left to do. That's it.
Hello? Hey, don't worry about it. I'll fix it in a second.
He said he can fix it. All right. All right. That's more like it. He says he can fix it.
Walking down the sidewalk, kicking my feet as I'm moving to the music. Step to the beat. I woke up today, canceled all my plans, and I stepped right outside with my guitar in my hands, and the notes became loud as the sound caressed the air, and I kicked it up a notch as I strolled without a care, 'cause I'm going down the road to a brand new place.
So, as you can see from that video, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Sometimes we just need to get off the escalator, and some of you might be chuckling as you saw that. Lara, just share with us what some of your thoughts were when you saw that video.
Some time ago I watched a little video similar to this of a man and a woman talking, and it may be kind of demeaning to the woman in a little way, but she's got a nail sticking out of her forehead, and she's in a lot of pain, and she's frustrated, and she's telling her husband all about this pain she's experiencing, and he just keeps saying like, the nail. Made me think about that. I love this little video because it just absolutely highlights how easy it is to get stuck in one way of thinking when we need to solve a problem. And we forget that we are actually really innovative and creative. We have the ability, if we push ourselves and expose ourselves to new ideas and take risks and step forward, we can be okay. And that's about neuroplasticity, right?
Yes. And that video emphasizes even a whole, a wide range of reactions that we can have to situations that we might think that are very impossible. So what we're going to do is we're going to get off the escalator, and we are going to look at some parts of the neuroplasticity. So if we can go back to our slideshow. So neuroplasticity refers to the brain's ability to adapt. Neuroplasticity is a capacity of neurons, which are those cells in the brain that we looked at earlier, and neural networks. In other words, those brain pathways and how those different neurons connect together in the brain to change their connections and behavior in response to new information. And the great news about this discovery about how our brains work is that there's always a possibility for change, to learn and to experience. And this provides limitless possibilities for us as humans for healing, recovery, improvement, and learning, and in a variety of circumstances, in fact, anything in life. The research is ongoing, and knowing what we do know about the incredible intricacies and capabilities that God has given us, this is a discovery that could be ongoing into eternity. The possibilities are endless. The only limitations might be the ones that we put on ourselves. So referring back to last week's presentation, we're really limited by our own thought processes, which we have control over. And this is really exciting. In children, I'm sorry, Lara, were you going to say something?
No, I'm anxious to hear.
Okay, so with children, their brains are growing and forming at a staggering rate. So going back to our slide there, they can grow at a rate of 1.8 million new connections per second, which is quite incredible. And even in adult brains, the brain can restructure itself and also birth new brain cells. And I'll be giving a statistic on that even for seniors a little bit later. There was an article by the National Center for Biotechnology Information, and they did a review of the research and some of the components of neuroplasticity, brain health, longevity, and how various factors come together to overall, impact our health and our well-being, not to mention how long we spend on this earth. In this article, they indicated, and the research shows, that the brain gains, in other words, improvements, changes in positivity, can occur at any age, and that even includes reversing some brain damage or some degeneration that may have occurred. And there was a time when, I remember when I first got into the field, when I was doing my undergrad degree, that was never talked about at that point. Yeah, and so now, and the next point, there is 700 new brain cells daily. This is even found in seniors. And so this is that was the one area of the hippocampus alone. And as you'll know from previous programs that we did, the hippocampus is largely responsible for our memory. And so this really leads into a lot of fascinating pieces regarding Alzheimer's and other ways and abilities to cope and change. And so especially during this time of uncertainty with the COVID situation, that might be something that we really want to, can give us some hope and want to hang on to, that, okay, if I don't like how things are going today, it doesn't have to stay that way. So what they also pointed out in that article was the value of the power of the positives and the influences on, and how this influenced neurogenesis.
Fascinating.
It really is, because it showed the difference of the negative and the positive by how our thinking works, how that impacts our neuroplasticity in a negative or a positive way. They also went into looking at some lifestyle components that impacted it as well. And they found that the impact of sleep was quite phenomenal. A healthy sleep is critical for brain function and brain health. And many of us will know, if we haven't had a good night's sleep, we're not feeling that great. Our memories are definitely worse. We don't think as well in terms of critical thinking and making decisions. And what they also found was that healthy sleep was essential for molecules to function well, and also for removing waste. And by the brain being able to do that in our sleep, it increased performance. What they also found was that there's another component, exercise, and they found that that was extremely important on effectively reversing age-related loss in volume of the brain, which they thought could not come back. I mean, there used to be the thought that that was not possible. They also noticed improvements in memory. What they noticed was that the reversal occurred in both the hippocampus, which is that memory piece, and the prefrontal cortex, which is, of course, our complex processes and a number of other things that we've talked about before. So also going into calorie restriction and nutrients. This was really important because they focused on a study that was also has been mentioned before on Okinawans, and particularly they're individuals that are over 100 years old. There's been a lot of individuals have been wanting to study these folks and what makes them different. And what was interesting was by having a calorie restricted diet, in other words, not eating whatever we wanted to, and watching out for obesity, and also eating foods that were nutrient dense, similar to that recipe we just shared at the beginning. It was really important because they found that when those individuals went back into, when Western diets were influenced, that actually reduced. So there was a lot to be said for temperate eating, and certainly not overeating, calorie counting, as well as nutrient-dense foods. Then they went into the difference between thriving on hope versus maintaining negativity, and how that had a significant impact. In fact, what they found was that there was a significantly steeper hippocampal volume loss. In other words, that memory piece of the brain lost volume. And in place of that, there was a greater accumulation of tangles and amyloid plaques. So to simplify that, what that means is that with the reduction in memory and brain capability, it increased the brain's tangles and susceptibility to degeneration in the brain. And many of these, like the plaques and tangles, some people may have heard about in relations and discussions around dementia. So they found that conversely, that purposeful activity, in other words, doing something with a purpose, whether it was exercise or something else, forestalled and possibly reversed age-related declines in a study with seniors. In other words, no matter what their capabilities were, if these individuals, regardless of their age, got up in the morning, had a purpose for what they were doing, could still maintain and even delay some age-related declines in brain function. So what they found was that there was a positive impact of both exercise and healthy diet, that was very powerful. And in addition to the things already mentioned, that the two together created an even greater benefit in overall and brain health.
Wow. So positivity, purposeful activity, and diet and exercise and sleep. But that's so interesting that negativity actually created, what did you call it, tangles and amyloid plaques.
Yeah, it was fascinating. And actually, there's been more than one study. This was more like of a review of the research that they had done, and so it's ongoing. But it was really remarkable, the difference. And it's almost like the one text we have in Proverbs, that as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. 100%.
Can I just ask a question about? There's a couple slides back that you mentioned positivity. Value of the power of the positives, and did that have to do with like the volume of cells that were being produced, or their ability to function in memory?
I believe it was both. And in fact, that's a very good question. Let me just go back in my notes here.
Slide 16.
Which one?
Slide 16.
Okay. Yeah, so I think it was both, because it's saying here that with the new cells that were produced daily, that was in regards to the hippocampus and that value of the power of the positives. In fact, I actually have the article here with me. I will just refer to it here in a moment, just so I can cite it.
Powerful thought, that positive, that whole Pollyanna thing that we sometimes think is, oh, get real. But that Pollyanna mindset of, I'm going to be positive no matter what, that actually, according to this research, lends to better brain activity, like volume and memory capability.
Yes, and in fact, they found also, in addition to that one of the things was giving, even if you give yourself some tender, loving care, and that's another part of the positive piece, that can actually, they noticed that in some cases there was an increase, that was an increase 50% in lifespan to the equivalent of 90 human years in the rat study that they did.
What?
Yeah. So it's really quite significant. And so, think you can, think you can't.
That's
Either
right.
way, you're right.
Right. That's right.
And
Choice, right? For our brain to keep growing and experiencing improvements in memory.
yes. And so the whole point behind that is that we get to decide every day, and we talked about those choices in the last couple of sessions regarding our emotional intelligence and the cognitive behavioral therapy, and the choices that we make are really integral to our health.
Yeah.
And so, and at the end of the day, even in this COVID situation, who wants to be in control? So, what do you have in front of you right now that you do have control over? Like the one patient I gave the example of, it's like when I asked her that question, I said, what do you need to do today? She said to me, she said, I need to make dinner. I said, can you do that? She goes, yeah. Good.
Purposeful.
That's right. Yeah. So we'll just go back to the slideshow, because what all of this discussion brings us to also is the impact of hope. And I had to use this in the quote, because it said, even the aged brain retains a high level of plasticity. And so it doesn't matter. I mean, we used to think, when we would get to a certain age, that was it. And that's not true. This is encouraging because it not only gives information that the brain can improve and grow itself, reverse harmful effects, and thrive, it also confirms and encourages us that we can be proactive in our brain health. We are not stuck with the prospect of age-related brain decline. And there are so many things that we can do to maintain our brain and our body. So really, that gives us some control.
This is really good news for me. Recently I've been thinking about going back to school, and I walked up the stairs of a building that I may be going to school in, and I was thinking, I'm just about 50. Like, most of these kids here are going to be like 20. I'm going to be an old woman. But yet, according to this, I have capability left.
Absolutely, absolutely. And sometimes there was, back in the day, they used to say garbage in, garbage out. Well, that's really true. If what we put into our body and our brains, like the investment that we make, is going to be critical. So chances are you might be taking care of your frontal lobe a little better than some of those other students. So chances are that you might actually do better.
Well, if I exercise, watch my diet, sleep, positive words.
Yeah, and and there's so many things too. I mean, up here in Canada, and we've got viewers from various places, but here in Canada, we're coming into that season where we tend to do a little bit better mental health wise, because we actually get to have some daylight. But in the wintertime, we're down to less than 8 hours a day, and that itself can impact our brain health and our resiliency and our ability to bounce back. It's more depressing. So, impacting things even like a medical grade light box, and getting out when you can in the daytime, is really important. Being able to have a window. I will tell you, anecdotally for myself, in the offices that I work in, I typically don't see the sun. In fact, on a really busy day, if I've got 6 or 7 patients, guess what? I don't see the sun. In the wintertime, I don't see the sun. I don't see it. I don't even know what the weather is all day long. Now, since I've been working at home, my home office is set up by my patio doors and windows, so I get, whatever the weather happens to be streaming in all the time, and it makes such a big difference.
It's huge. Not huge.
And go ahead.
No, I'm agreeing with you.
Okay. What we have next for our viewers today is we have a video on the backwards bike. And I have run into this in various courses and seminars that I've attended. And this is a fascinating example. And I want people to pay attention and to see what happens with the brain in a backwards bike.
Hey, it's me, Destin. Welcome back to Smarter Every Day. You've heard people say it's just like riding a bike, meaning it's really easy and you can't forget how to do it, right? But I did something. I did something that damaged my mind. It happened on the streets of Amsterdam, and I got really scared, honestly. I can't ride a bike like you can anymore. Before I show you the video of what happened, I need to tell you the backstory. Like many 6-year-olds with a MacGyver mullet, I learned how to ride a bike when I was really young. I had learned a life skill and I was really proud of it. Everything changed though when my friend Barney called me 25 years later. Where I work, the welders are geniuses and they like to play jokes on the engineers. He had a challenge for me. He had built a special bicycle and he wanted me to try to ride it. He had only changed one thing. When you turn the handlebar to the left, the wheel goes to the right. When you turn it to the right, the wheel goes to the left. I thought this would be easy, so I hopped on the bike ready to demonstrate how quickly I could conquer this.
And here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Destin Sandlin. First attempt riding the bicycle.
All right. So the faster I go, the better. Yeah.
I couldn't do it. You can see that I'm laughing, but I'm actually really frustrated. In this moment, I had a really deep revelation. My thinking was in a rut. This bike revealed a very deep truth to me. I had the knowledge of how to operate the bike, but I did not have the understanding. Therefore, knowledge is not understanding. Look, I know what you're probably thinking. Destin's probably just an uncoordinated engineer and can't do it. But that's not the case at all. The algorithm that's associated with riding a bike in your brain is just that complicated. Think about it. Downwards force on the pedals, leaning your whole body, pulling and pushing the handlebars, gyroscopic precession in the wheels, every single force is part of this algorithm. And if you change any one part, it affects the entire control system. I do not make definitive statements that often, but I'm telling you right now, you cannot ride this bicycle. You might think you can, but you can't. I know this because I'm often asked to speak at universities and conferences and I take the bike with me. It's always the same. People think they're going to try some trick or they're just going to power through it. It doesn't work. Your brain cannot handle this. For instance, this guy, I offered him $200 just to ride this bike 10 feet across the stage. Everybody thought he could do it.
No, you didn't understand. You didn't understand. So, this way. Okay. All right, just a second. All right, so, whenever you're ready. Yeah. Go ahead. No, you have to keep your feet on. Dude, all right, give it a go. Just give it a go. Wait. Like, you gotta start rolling at least. Go. And go. Oh, go! All right, back up. Okay, wait. Keep your feet on the pedal. Go. Go right off. Just keep your feet on the pedals. Handles on. Yeah, come on. All right, one more time. Okay.
Once you have a rigid way of thinking in your head, sometimes you cannot change that, even if you want to. So here's what I did. It was a personal challenge. I stayed out here in this driveway and I practiced about 5 minutes every day. My neighbors made fun of me. I had many wrecks, but after 8 months, this happened. One day I couldn't ride the bike and the next day I could. It was like I could feel some kind of pathway in my brain that was now unlocked. It was really weird though. It's like there's this trail in my brain, but if I wasn't paying close enough attention to it, my brain would easily lose that neural path and jump back onto the old road it was more familiar with. Any small distractions at all, like a cell phone ringing in my pocket, would instantly throw my brain back to the old control algorithm and I would wreck. But at least I could ride it. My son is the closest person to me genetically, and he's been riding a normal bike for 3 years. That's over half his life. I wanted to know how long it would take him to learn how to ride a backwards bike, so I told him if he learned how to ride a backwards bike, he could go with me to Australia and meet a real astronaut. Are you gonna give up?
No.
Go ahead. This is how it starts. Look at this. This is such a big deal. Get up, you got it. Did you see his brain get it? So in how many weeks have we been doing this? 2 weeks? In 2 weeks, he did something that took me 8 months to do, which demonstrates that a child has more neuroplasticity, am I even saying that right, than an adult. It's clear from this experiment that children have a much more plastic brain than adults. That's why the best time to learn a language is when you're a young child. All right, today's bike log. I can ride smooth, I can ride fast. I'm thinking the experiment is over. Okay, now I'm in Amsterdam, a city that has more bicycles than people. The question is, can I ride a normal bike now? I mean, I've spent all this time unlearning how to ride a bike. If I go back and try to ride a normal one, will my brain mess up? So I've tweeted a Smarter Everyday meetup, if you will, and I'm gonna see if somebody brings a bicycle and I'm gonna try to ride a normal bike. It's backwards, it's backwards. This was one of the most frustrating moments of my life. I had ridden a normal bike since I was 6, but in this moment, I couldn't do it anymore. I had set out to prove that I could free my brain from a cognitive bias. But at this point, I'm pretty sure that all I proved is that I could only redesignate that bias. So what you're not seeing is just a group of people here looking at me, looking at the strange American that can't ride a bike because they think I'm dumb. But I'm actually 2 levels deep into this because I've learned and unlearned. All right. After 20 minutes of making a fool out of myself, suddenly my brain clicked back into the old algorithm. I can't explain it, but it happened in a very specific moment. I got it. I'm back. Oh, it clicked. Hold it, it clicked. I got it. Okay, there it is. There was the moment. Okay, I can ride a bike. I tried to explain this to the people around me, and they just didn't get it. They thought I was faking the previous 20 minutes, and I couldn't get anybody to believe me. That looked like I faked that, didn't it? Yeah. Just a fake. You think I'm faking. You don't believe me.
That looks so weird. You were like, la, 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 and it's full.
You think I'm lying, don't you?
I do.
I'm not lying. I felt like the only person on the planet who had ever unlearned how to ride a bike, and I couldn't articulate it to anyone because everybody just knew that you can't forget how to ride a bike. So I learned 3 things from this experiment. I learned that welders are often smarter than engineers. I learned that knowledge does not equal understanding. And I learned that truth is truth, no matter what I think about it. So be very careful how you interpret things because you're looking at the world with a bias, whether you think you are or not. I'm Destin. You're getting smarter every day. Have a good one. Okay, if you want to support Smarter Every Day, you can download a free audiobook at audible.com/smarter. I recommend Commander Hadfield's book, which is An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth. I read it. It was awesome. If you think about it, I had to learn how to ride a different kind of bicycle, and my son did as well. But Commander Hadfield had to learn how to ride a different spaceship. Not only that, but a different type of space station.
He gave a little plug there for our own Chris Hadfield here from Canada. So that video is loaded with information that can apply to us. And how, you know, it took him 8 months and then 20 minutes to go back.
Wow. And the child?
Yeah, 2 weeks.
If you want to stay young, hang with kids. Is that the moral of the story?
Well, you know, and also about the brain and how it forms. And
sure.
It's really profound because when we look at wanting to change habits, many of us have been into this COVID thing like, 10 weeks now or more for some people. And the good news is that whatever adjustments that we've had to make, whatever ones we still have to make in the future. Other ones like yourself, Lara, who's considering going back to school. The good news is that the brain can change. It takes a lot of work. It takes, intentionality to do it. But can we? Absolutely.
In particular, I think about just the anxieties and worries and fears that people have entrenched now over the past 10 weeks, right? Thinking that, thought processes where, is it like hardwired now, where they have to undo that anxiety and fear of going out?
Well, and based on the information that they have coming in. So the reality is, for those of you that are watching, we present this with the hope that you'll be able to have some hope that you can change things. I mean, if somebody really wants to get creative, they can might have some time to make their own backwards bike and see how they do with that. You can get back to me on that. But that all being said, is that it's what, no matter how we view that situation, one of the words that he said more than once was the frustration about not being able to do what he thought that he could do. That was similar to the people in the previous video. And some of us might be laughing as we watch that, and thinking, well, why don't you just get off the escalator? It's like a staircase. Why wouldn't you? That's right. But we get stuck. And so the whole point of this piece with neuroplasticity is, we have choices.
And be hopeful.
Definitely.
We can be hopeful.
Yes. And also, if we see other people in our communities and people that are struggling and suffering with that, certainly those of us that may have gone through some things that have helped us to develop the neuroplasticity, we certainly can be of a help to others if we understand what's going on in the brain.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. Great video.
Yeah, that was that explains neuroplasticity in a nutshell. I did want to also provide people with some reading suggestions if they were interested. So going back to the slideshow, I just want to show this book here by Norman Doidge. He's got a couple of books out, but The Brain That Changes Itself is one that people have found very helpful. It's a New York Times bestseller. And it's, parts of it'll go into a lot of those stories about how we can work with the brain. Another one, and it actually bridges between neuroplasticity and cognitive behavioral therapy, is Mind Over Mood, and it's by Dennis Greenberger and Christine Podesky. It's about the subtitle is Change How You Feel by Changing the Way You Think. And as we talked about before in the slides with the seniors, about the importance and positivity and the hope that can have. And those kinds of, our thought processes can take us one direction or another. And it's really, really critical, how we address all of that. And there's a spiritual side to all of this as well that I think is important to remember. Because if we remember our Creator and the God that created this absolutely fascinating brain, and the opportunities and the possibilities with it are really, really limitless. And just reminds me of a text in Psalms that says, I will praise you. This is David writing to God saying, I will praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made.
Amen.
And we, after all the years of studying the brain, we haven't even begun to tap into some of these capabilities that it has. It's a constantly ever-changing, there's always something more to learn every day, including, the things that we learn about each other in our relationships, about our community, about our society, our culture, and the fact that it's really multi-layered, it's rich, and quite frankly, God doesn't create boring stuff.
True.
And another text that comes to my mind is on thinking about the length and breadth of depth of our possibilities. It says, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Think of what that could mean for that person that might have had a brain injury, that might have been experiencing ongoing pain from an accident, someone that's going into some cognitive decline. You know, renewing our mind can mean so many different things. We don't have to stay where we are. And I'm thinking about people, you know, we've discussed people that are going through COVID and the various things that they have been going through with their families. People have lost folks, they've lost jobs, the future's uncertain. And if you're despairing today about the future, finances, losses, or even broken relationships, the good news is that healing is possible. Renewing our mind is possible. And, oh, sorry, were you going to say, I'm on a slide so I can't see.
No, I'm agreeing with you. Anything is possible.
Yes. And the last part of that verse was, you know, and that's good, acceptable, and perfect will of God. So, you know, knowing that God has the best for us in mind can also give us hope. That can inspire us to look after our bodies and our brains. And, you know, have the hope that there's always something more, even if we can't change the circumstances that we're living in right now.
Sure. I love this next one, Lamentations, Grace, joy. Grace is a good friend of ours.
Yes. Maybe she's watching. Shout out to Grace.
Yeah.
This I recall to my mind, therefore I have hope. We'll read this next slide. Through the Lord's mercies, we are not consumed. In other words, COVID can take its course, whatever it's going to do, but that doesn't mean that we have to be consumed. The promise here is because His, which is referring to God, compassions fail not. Amen. Lara, you and I have gone for a few walks in the last couple weeks. We are social distancing, just so everyone knows. And you know, even the windswept terrain that we've been walking on, and those crocuses are coming up and blooming like there's so many of them, tons of them. I've been going for walks with other friends and we've been seeing them too. And, you know, in spite of that adversity, those flowers come up. And it's neuroplasticity in a way. I mean, in spite of adversity, that flower decides that it's still going to come up.
Yeah. Incredible.
Yes, it really, really is. So to give people some hope still, that when you're wanting to change things, it really comes down to 3 words, which are the same. And that is practice, practice, practice. Like the gentleman on the bike. It took him 8 months of practicing, but he had first-hand experience of how he could change his brain and how he could rewire it. So changing those pathways takes work, but it's worth it. And when you know, if you end up going back to school, Lara, you know, you might find that that's going to happen for you. We might have students now that are not used to sitting in a classroom after a couple of months.
Right.
And, you know, people that may be used to working from home and then have to adjust to working back in their office and commuting again and dealing with traffic. But can we do it? Yeah, those videos show that we can.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I also encourage people to be patient with themselves and with other people, because it's about the process. And we're all at different places, but it can be done. And even through part way, if we're making some changes, we may decide to change directions, and that's okay. But the good news is that we can. It's kind of like, many people may remember a few weeks ago when I interviewed Christy. She shared something with me about skiing down a new ski hill. And depending on who I'm working with, I use these metaphors in a different way, but one of them would be, you know, whether you're skiing or here in Canada, let's say that, you know, we've gotten a foot of snow overnight, and you come out of your house and you need to shovel snow in the morning. or you want to take a walk because you still want to be healthy. The first time that you walk through a foot of snow, how easy is that? What about the second time? What about the 5th time? What about the 10th time? By this time, you've actually created your own path. And the brain works the same way.
Don't give up. Keep going.
And I'll refer to one, we used this slide in an earlier presentation. There's a reason the windshield is bigger than the rear view mirror, because where you're going is so much better than where you've been. And that's important too, because that even if we go back to one of those videos, the folks on the escalator were, you know, if they were ever able to get off that escalator, they would certainly have the rear view mirror because they may not want to go back to that experience, but maybe they might actually find out and learn that they could actually get off the escalator. And with the bike, he now has his brain even, you know, more pathways because he's got both ways of riding a bike in his brain that he can refer to. And so, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So the final text I want to share with folks today is Philippians 4:13. And that is that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And we have only tapped into some very, very brief parts of the brain, even the topic of neuroplasticity. But we can know that as human beings, we have gone through a lot of things in our world's history. We've seen many examples. Lara, you shared, I believe it was last week or the week before, about the volunteering that's been going on in the city here in Calgary. And, you know, there's so many stories all around the world of human resiliency and giving back and caring for others. And people thinking, oh, I could never go through this, but they did.
Yeah, I remember back to when we first started hearing that we were going to have to go into quarantine, and it was just maybe a few weeks and then a month, and never did I think we could get this far in my wildest imagination, all the way to the end of May. Yeah. And maybe it will not be just to the end of May for some people. Yeah.
Yes, we don't know. But maybe
Sorry, go ahead.
Maybe what we've learned from this is that we can.
Yeah.
And we have tools we don't know that we have. And
time passes, whether we like it or not.
Well, absolutely.
Whether we like it or not, we just have to decide how we want to spend it. Yeah.
Yes. And, you know, are we going to stay and lay in bed all day? Or are we going to get out and now walk around in the sunshine?
That's for sure. That's for sure. Joy, we had some questions that came in. Actually, a great comment by Barry Butler. I've tasted some of Patty's culinary creations, and they're amazing. So another shout out to Patty. And I have a question here too, but I'll just make it one. Whose brain is easier to reprogram, male or female?
I would have to do some research on that because that leads to a whole, you know, topic and discussion on gender for sure.
Right.
But if we look at the basic brain structure, the research that I have looked at and any type of studying or reading that I've done so far hasn't particularly designated or segregated the genders out so much. It's been, there are certain aspects on research backs it up of parts of the brain and certain tasks that are certainly maybe perhaps easier for men than women, but then now that we know about neuroplasticity, that may blow some of that out of the water. And to answer that more thoroughly, I'd probably have to do more. In our general discussion tonight, I'm not speaking from a neuroscientist background, but you know, the sky's the limit.
environment plays such a big role in it as well, doesn't it?
Yes.
You know, it's not just the hardwired genetics, but the kinds of environments both men and women are in, I suppose, right? A woman or a man that's in a really nurturing, positive, healthy environment, their brains will develop at probably the same rates, maybe in a little different way, but maybe environment has a big part to play in that as well.
Well, and when we look at neuroplasticity, as you've mentioned about environment, it can also vary so much from person to person because of the different factors that that impact our growth. So, for example, you could have several kids from the same community in the same school with the same teachers, but when their home environments are different, how they learn, how that brain develops could be very vastly different. You know, in a stark example of a child who's grown up in a traumatized environment or trauma-filled environment, someone who's experienced more trauma, that certainly will impact their ability to function in school. And, you know, Lara, as an educator, you may have seen some of this.
Absolutely. Well, sometimes even within the same family, right? I mean, I've got 2 boys, and my husband and I pretty much raised them the same, and yet they needed different things, right? And you rarely know what your kids need until it's too late. If you could go back and do it again, then you could create, you know, more personalized environments for them. But even children from the same family, one can come out saying, you know, I had great parents that loved me and did everything right, and another that says my parents sucked. They abused me. My boys haven't accused me of that, but you know, the point being, we all have totally unique brains, hearts, minds, everything. So.
Yes, and that is because each one of us is unique. We're not going to have the same experience. I mean, people can go to the exact same event, the same wedding, funeral, family reunion, whatever it might be, and have a completely different recollection from someone else. Does it make it right or wrong? No, it just is.
That's right. You know, it's a neat thought to know that we have been created in the image of God. And given the fact that we are all so unique and so different, what does that say about the image of God? It is so limitless, and the potential is so, I mean, we're going to get all of eternity to explore that, but God has got an incredible personality and capability to create billions of humans that each have completely different minds and bodies. And anyways, I just want to say thank you, Joy, for sharing this important study that gives us some great foundation for our own personal lives and how we look at the world, what we do with our time, how we view ourselves, how we interact with others. And thank you also, listeners, for tuning in to us this evening. It's been great. And why don't we just close with prayer, Joy? Would you mind just asking God to go with us now as we get our brains rested for the evening and into this sunny weekend wherever we are?
Yes, thank you. Our dear Heavenly Father, I just want to thank you so much for the opportunity that we have to even discover and learn more about the vast and intricate creation that you've given us in our 2.5 to 3 pound brain. I pray that you would be with each person that spent time with us this evening and viewed it, this message, Lord, that would give them hope even during this time of COVID-19 and restrictions and some of the fears and anxieties that people are going through, to know that, you know, we can adjust to the changes that may or may not be coming, that we can, or that we perceive, and that we can be healthy and whole, and even train our brains to do new things, to maybe even make up for some lost time and to gain some of those brain cells and capabilities back. And I just thank you for creating us, and that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. God bless each one of these people that are listening tonight, and Lord, I ask you be with each one. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening. God bless.
Bye-bye.